is our education system outdated? Universities have copped a blast from the Chief of the Business Council, Jennifer Westacott. She says too many young people are making poor choices that are impacting their job opportunities later in life.
Each night, we're going to be pulling apart the big issues right here on Your Money Live with a panel of influential and opinionated business people. So for Taking Stock tonight, we're joined by Shivani Gopal, CEO of The Remarkables, and Richard Miles, the Head of Enterprise at the University of Sydney. Thank you both so much for joining us. Richard, I might start with you. Some fighting words there from Jennifer Westacott. Do you think that she's got a point?
I think Jennifer Westacott has got a point up to a point. They're absolutely right. If you look at the sort of new employment landscape, it basically means that students are going to need a whole new set of skills. And the number one thing they're going to need is to be agile and to be lifelong learners. So of course what she's saying and what her organisation is saying is we need to provide people with those opportunities. But in some respects, there's something more important here, and this is what the universities are saying, is that we need to change university education a bit to make sure that the students actually have the fundamentals, think critically, be able to speak and write properly, be able to problem solve, and to be able to work with different people.
And, I mean, we need to have changed it yesterday, right? Because this is the point. The globe is moving at such a fast pace. We're all needing to be more skilled and quicker than ever before.
Look, the scary thing, I go to lots of seminars, scary seminars about the future of work. And the most scary thing about the future of work is that the future's here right now. So when we talk about there being less accountants, less professional services people, less lawyers, it's not in 10, 20 years, it's in 3 to 5 years. So universities, that in some respects are, the forcing grounds of talent, need to make sure they're providing students with the right educational opportunities to hone those skills.
Isn't her point is that they're not, though? Isn't that a very point?
Yes, but I think in some respects, but if you look at universities like my university, if you look at during the third year now, all students are doing a set of project units where what they do is they go out and work with external partners. These are business partners, this is government, there's charities, NGOs, to hone those skills. So increasingly, universities out of the classroom and out there in the community.
Shivani, I might throw this over to you. Part of the criticism here is that, as Richard said, there's talk that universities aren't agile enough in a growing and changing workforce, that you need to be able to quickly reskill and retrain yourself and get back out there. Do you agree with that criticism?
Yeah, I do. And what this is focusing towards is the trend towards the unbundling of education. So to all the credit that universities have, and they do have a huge amount of credit, and they do give discipline to people. So we do need them, and it has its place. But outside of that, what we can also see is that the university education system is incredibly static. You're there for 3 years, 4 years. If you've gotten the wrong degree, you've gotten the wrong job, can you possibly not just afford by way of money, but by way of time to actually go out there and get that great big chunk of education again? So by having, as the Business Council Australia is suggesting, an allotment of money, a lifelong limit, if you like, where I can use at university or I can use at vocational training, you're actually able to unbundle that education. You may have a marketing degree, you may go, you know what, and this happens to so many people. I mean, how many jobs have you changed, in your lifetime? You might say, well, marketing's not quite for me. I think I'm going to go and do something else, and I'll unbundle that education through this lifetime limit that I've got. And you can even look at traditional careers, for example, like lawyers. You obviously need to know law really, really well. But guess what lawyers aren't really good at? They're really not good at relationship management. They're really not good at, and this is self-professed, by the way. A lot of lawyers tell me this, so I hope I don't get a whole bunch of complaints thereafter. But they tell me they've got to go out there and do business development, and that's an art and a skill. Why don't we unpack this and enable people to go do that without having to go back and do, again, a static university degree? Richard?
Okay, I completely agree, but you need to get the foundations right. In some respects, we're racing ahead of ourselves. There are two things, and we speak to hundreds of employers, two things that universities don't do well at the moment. One is to get students working in groups. Students at the moment usually hate working in groups. The only thing they hate more is being assessed in groups. But we know 90% of work...
That happens in the real world.
But 90% of work these days is group work. And the second thing is being able to work with people who are different from yourselves. So universities, what we need to do is right from the foundation, make sure that we get that right, and then all these other reforms and these other packages we're talking about will work so much better. You can do if you're not agile thinker before you start this, then a lot of these sort of micro-credentialing degrees and little units, well, they're not going to work for you.
You know, the good thing, when you talk with various representatives even in big business, you do find that there are these really cool pockets that kind of happen between the business world and the universities where there's quite collaborative work, I find, whether it's grants programs or there's actually some really cool stuff happening. I mean, you probably see it all the time with The Remarkable Woman.
I really do, and it's funny that we should be talking about this because so many women actually come to The Remarkable Woman and say, well, I've done a degree in X and I'm working in Y, but I'm really not moving ahead. And if you boil it down, it's because you've got your core skills, you need to develop your peripheral skills. So you need to develop your relationship management, your stakeholder management, your influential skills, your negotiating skills, so on and so forth. But for this to work from the business end, as well as you're saying, Brooke, I think what needs to happen here is the business needs to come into it and say, we're going to accept roles where we have qualifications, yes, from universities, but we're also going to look at skills, and skills can be derived from different areas, so that unbundling of education. Also, that could come in two ways. So through education via universities, education via vocational academies, but also by looking at greater ways of technology and experiential learning, as you were saying, Richard, around groups of people getting together. And that's when you get everything tying really well and the system actually working.
But so when you go into an employer, I mean, that sounds great, but I need the piece of paper, right? Like, nobody's going to take me seriously in a job application unless I have the bachelor's.
He would say yes,
I mean, I don't know about that. I'm genuinely curious. Do you need a bachelor's degree just to get into the next thing? Or?
You know what? And I don't want to flatter you, but that's a great question. Okay? And that's,
thank you so much.
And that's, you know,
how do we get you anywhere?
Yeah, but that's the million-dollar question. On the one hand, okay, we would like to see different ways of assessment, different ways, you know, like a passport. We'd like to see different ways of people showing their credentials. But you know what? Students often want marks. Okay, they want the marks. They want something on a piece of paper. They say, "We've studied for this length of time."
But so it's funny because when when you look at the startup space, I see you do various interviews with people investing in, say, startups, new businesses. And they say, "What are you actually investing in?" They say, "You're actually investing in the person, their passion." It's not even kind of, you know, how smart they were or their, I don't know, where they've come from. It's just if they see a passionate business leader who really, you know, is giving it a go, that's almost what they invest in. So
yeah,
there's not a lot of
paper involved. And if I can expand on that, and again, it comes down to people just coming fresh out of university, and you've got just on a piece of paper that you've got your bachelor's degree or something like that. I've seen this time and time again when I've hired new graduates fresh out of university or about, say, 3-4 years outside of university, and they're almost hiding behind the degree. I've got the degree, and so therefore I've got this job. Well, actually, no, you don't. There's so much more that you need to have. You need to have people skills. You need to have skills with technology, at least a basic hygiene level is what I call it. You need to be able to use Excel, Word, Outlook, and all these sorts of things. So the experiential, real-world stuff is incredibly important. You've got to know how to hold up a conversation.
Sure.
I feel like this is the same issues kind of bringing down Elon Musk right now. I mean, like
basic tweet.
Basic kind of standards of something in there, like, you know, don't smoke weed on YouTube, live on
Careful with your social media. That's a big one.
Yeah, don't make out you've got funding that you don't necessarily have. What do you guys think of the Elon Musk kind of saga? And we're talking about this, you know, he's kind of been slapped on the wrist, I think, in some ways. He's allowed to be CEO. Does it make a difference if you're CEO, chairman, you know, if you're such a dominant figure?
I think it does. Look, I think this is one of the, obviously this is a really hubristic moment, right? You see this guy who's up there, and slowly but surely, sort of one tweet after the other, we see him sort of descending, and his share price of his company descending. And he's got to a point where actually he needs some advice from somebody close to him. And that's the thing about, you know, when you get to a certain critical size, I'm a great believer that you need to separate those two roles. I think actually having a chairperson and having a CEO in the same role, that can be very, very problematic.
Shivani, I mean, $55 million is not a big deal for Elon Musk. It is for a lot of other people. You're not going to be chairman of the company anymore. I mean, do you agree with Richard? Is this a kind of a case study in how not to run a business of that size?
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's really interesting that they've let this go on for so long, that the board has allowed Musk to be the CEO and the chairperson. Let's take a look at what a chairperson does. A chairperson is there to support and guide and set the agenda and hold the CEO accountable to that agenda, but also enable and make sure that everything runs smoothly. So you've got Musk, who is setting the agenda, and running the company at the same time. How in the world was that ever supposed to work? I get in startups, you've got no choice. You might not have enough people, but you've got, you know, a huge company here at what, $425 a share, and it's just not going to work. So, if anything, this is bitter medicine that Musk and Tesla has to swallow, and it's really good for them. So I say medicine operatively because you've actually got a whole bunch of analysts that have been saying for quite a while, we actually doubt investing in Tesla right now unless he has a COO, unless he has someone supporting him. I mean, he's the CEO of 3 other companies, for crying out loud. He's got a COO for SpaceX, didn't have one for Tesla. So this is a blessing in disguise. At least now he'll have 2 more directors, someone policing his tweets. So you're not going to be able to go out there and, you know, and do something completely nutty like that.
But we're not allowed to know what people are thinking. Yeah. It's the same Donald Trump kind of discussion, isn't it? Isn't it good that we know what he's thinking? Do they just hide behind advisors who write their tweets for them?
I think it's if you can, you know, if you're steady at what you think, or if you change your mind every sort of 2 minutes or so, then that's problematic. Look, I think in the end, this is also about the growing pains of particular companies. So, look, we live in an age, and I don't want to sound like an old Marxist, because I'm not, but you know, we live in a world of the cult of the individual at the moment. And so I go and hear loads of entrepreneurs speak, okay? And increasingly they all sound the same, okay? It's quite macho,
so
swaggering.
Individual, and yet
They've got their little headpieces, and it's, you
Yeah.
know, and if you listen to their stories, they all say the same thing as, hey man, look at me, I'm a genius. I'm an individual genius. And the problem with it is that you get to a certain point when you've got shareholders, you've got a business, that's not enough. And actually, one of the things we need to teach everybody is however brilliant you are as an individual, you've got to be able to work with other people, because eventually it all gets too big for you.
I suppose the big problem here is that it's going to be sounding all too familiar for a lot of Australians who work for a small business where the leader is one and the same as the business.
Exactly.
It's not a Tesla, it's not a kind of a giant business, but still it's got that difficulty of whatever that person says goes. I mean, do you have any thoughts on how you might improve your circumstances if you do find yourself working for someone like that?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, and it's very trepidatious, isn't it? I mean, how do you go to your boss and say, hey, look, I think that maybe you need to separate, you know, your roles out and have a separate chair, if they even have one, you know, at that level. So I think have an open conversation with your leader and ask them if they're feeling fully supported. And just note, I mean, you know, you can see this with Musk as well. Look, I understand you've been under a whole bunch of strain lately. Can we have a chat? Because just as I'm here to support you, you know, I want to make sure that you're also feeling supported on the other side. So let's have a conversation around that, and then use a little bit of performance management, you know, on your leader, and say, so what I think I'm hearing here is that, you know, you feel as though you're running the business, you're setting the strategy, you're managing the strategy. You know, gee, have you thought about having someone else do that for you? I hear a chair could possibly run that role.
And make sure you've got another job lined up.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Just in case it falls flat.
Speaking of performance management, this is a loose link, but we did love a little story that Chris and I saw today around, well, coffee kind of snobbery. That is, we talk about the rise of the individual, right? The coffee snobbery. We saw this story that, 1 in 10 people say they're embarrassed by their friend's coffee order, right?
Not their own, they're friends.
They're friends. And to like walk up and to listen to their friend order their supposed whatever coffee they like is kind of embarrassing for them. Like, I understand that because the coffee shop here where we work, I heard someone yesterday order a 3/4 latte, and I thought, stop sitting on the fence. It's either a full or a half. Like, don't be so indecisive.
It gets a lot worse too.
I have a 3/4 strong flat white.
There you go. I mean,
I am guilty of this thing. But I've got something.
Hang on. Does it make a difference, 3/4 to full?
Yeah, because it's so much stronger. I want it to be stronger than a full. I don't want too much milk.
And so you're telling me if they did a half instead of 3/4, you say, ugh, can't drink it.
I'm not sure I dare do that, actually. I think I'd just stay quiet. But
would you?
But every day, okay, I have a coffee with the same group of guys down in Coogee at about 6:30 in the morning, and one of them, Shane, I hate ordering his coffee because he has a weak latte. That probably says a lot about me. But every time we have in the barista, I always say, it's not for me. Isn't that shameful, isn't it?
You actually say that it's not for me.
The problem is it gets so much worse than that. I've gone to a cafe before where there was a beetroot latte on the menu, and I went in there kind of time and time again. Eventually I said, okay, I've got to try this thing. And the server came over to take my order. I said, I'll have the beetroot latte, and she said, really? You're really going to do that? I mean, it was a coffee. I mean, really, is there any end to this, Shivani? Your thoughts?
Look, I'm just glad we're having this conversation because clearly we've advanced as a society from judging people from having cask wine to having, you know, the Malbec from Argentina. So now we're talking about what kind of coffee you're ordering. I think we're doing pretty well if that's the kind of conversation we're having. I mean,
it's so, you know, the interesting thing is I see a lot of businesses now doing very well because they take the choice out of everything. It's like they're going the full circle. Everyone wants their choice and everything, but actually some people have got to the point like it's too much. Just tell me what I'm going to buy. There's a great shoe story called Allbirds, a New Zealand guy, and it's like the same shoe, men and women, couple of different colours. You want them, you don't want them. Bump, you know, bang. That's it.
No, you're
Soup
right.
Nazi of coffee.
Kind of.
But we like to know about, but we increasingly like to know about provenance, right? And provenance is important, you know.
Yes,
but,
that's true.
But you know, when you've got some very sort of serious-looking waiter standing next to you saying your pig was called Cliff and lived in such a very happy life, or something like that. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just too much information.
Yeah, that's true. Guys, we hope we can have you come back in a future show. Thank you for joining us at Your Money Live.
Thank
Richard and Shivani, thank you so much. I think we addressed you as the remarkable woman, but either way, kind of works. Thank you, Shivani.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.